Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Ask an Autistic. So what I love about this panel is they're always up for everything. So today we have a very special guest, and that's Jesse Saperstein, who's been on here many times. His mom came on today, and I decided I was going to punish her for supporting Jesse. I was going to ask her to do a totally impromptu Q&A where I'm going to ask questions to Jesse and his mom, and we're going to be doing, seeing how they answer these questions differently. They don't know what I'm going to ask. I don't even really know what I'm going to ask yet. So this is super unplanned, but what I love about this is it's a super authentic and fun conversation. And that's what really this panel is all about. So thank you so much, Jannis, for being here. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about, what it's like to be an autism mom?
Okay. Well, I'm Jesse's mom. Very proud of him and his accomplishments. I just had a birthday, August 20th, so I'm 66. And as I was saying before, for many years, my husband and I didn't know what was going on with Jesse. We had an inkling that there was something early on in, I guess, in nursery school. The teachers told my husband and myself that there was something, and we went to, as I said before, we went to several professionals. One was I think the first one was, he wasn't a psychiatrist. Well, he was a doctor. Maybe he was a psychologist or a neurologist. And Jesse was probably around 4. And he told us that it was like a developmental delay. And when I heard developmental delay, I thought, it was something that would, change, improve. And not realizing at the time that, well, he probably didn't know what it was either. He just said developmental delay. He didn't say, oh, Jesse's on the spectrum. So that was our first experience with a professional. Then when Jesse was 4, knowing there was that Jesse needed some help, we needed an extensive evaluation by a psychologist, a child psychologist in Fishkill, New York. And we needed that evaluation in order for Jesse to go to a special nursery school, because Jesse's first year of nursery school was at Vassar College. The Wimpheimer Nursery School was like a lab prep school. And that first year nursery school, when he was 3, that's when they were telling us there was something awry with Jesse. And I guess they felt they couldn't meet his needs. So then we found this nursery school called I think it was called the Early Education Center in Highland. So we needed this psych eval. And she saw Jesse several visits. And I remember, like it was yesterday, she told my husband and me that she saw autistic-like features. And my husband and I thought that she was out of her mind, because at that time, my understanding of autism was, a more severe case. I didn't think my affectionate, bright little boy had autism or was on the spectrum. And she wanted to follow up with us and see us again, but we never went back to her. So Jesse's second year of nursery school. So that was Jesse's second year of nursery school. And then when he was ready to start kindergarten, he was like in a self-contained class, not in our home school where he would have gone to elementary school. It was another elementary school that had this special program. I don't know if I'm answering your question, or.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Okay, so.
Yeah. Sorry,
so,
you can keep sharing us with Jesse.
Yes, so that was kindergarten, and it was a great class. The teachers were great. He was getting speech therapy there, occupational therapy, and then they saw that he was pretty good with reading. So I think it was first grade, they started to pull him out a couple times during the day, and he was mainstreamed into a regular first grade classroom for part of the day. And then they did that also. I wanted to keep him at that school, and he was also mainstreamed and I'm trying to remember, I think he was fully mainstreamed in second grade. Then third grade, he returned to his home school where his sister was attending. And he had a wonderful teacher who sort of took Jesse under her wing. Her name was Joan Storm. And he had a great third grade experience. And then fourth grade was a terrible year. I told the teacher from the beginning of the year, tell me if there's a problem. And keep in mind, we still didn't know that Jesse was on the spectrum. We were told early on when he went to that second nursery school, the special nursery school, that they said, yeah, there's something neurological going on, but we didn't have the label of autism yet. So getting back to fourth grade, the teacher never told me that there was an issue. And there was one kid, this little tiny kid, a boy, who was bullying Jesse. And looking back as a parent, I would have been more aggressive. Looking back, I wish I had removed Jesse from that fourth grade class. He was a fairly new teacher, and the class was in this small art room. So that was not a good year. And we somehow got through it. And then fifth grade, the teacher he had was, we ended up taking Jesse out of that fifth grade class 6 years into this school year. I mean, 6
weeks.
6 weeks, because that teacher, and Jesse mentions him in his memoir, of course, not using his real name. That teacher, if Jesse stayed in that classroom for that year, he would have done psychological damage to Jesse. So I went to the principal at that time, and I said, this isn't working out. Jesse, we have to take Jesse out. And this principal said to me, he was surprised when I requested that particular teacher for Jesse. At that school, parents were allowed to request the teacher that they wanted for their child, and you ended up with all these lopsided classes. You ended up with classes with the so-called smart kids and classes with some of the trouble kids. So I'm thinking to myself, if this principal thought this particular teacher was not going to be good for Jesse, I wish he would have, said something to me or, told me his opinion. But anyway, so Jesse was taken out of that. Oh, and that teacher years later was put on probation for making, what was it, racist remarks? Is that what it was, Jesse?
Racially insensitive remarks.
Yeah, anyway, he's so then we took him out of that fifth grade class, and he went into another class, and that she was a better teacher for you, right, Jesse?
She was much better, and she
yeah
knew how to deal with my occasional lapses in behavior.
And then middle school was challenging for you, right?
Yeah, that's an understatement. It was more like a living nightmare for the most part.
And then high school was also a challenge.
Right, up until 11th grade, at least.
Yeah, and then I think what helped you, I know you've said numerous times to me that getting involved with clubs, like the school newspaper, the SAD club, Students Against Drunk Driving, and you participate in some of the school plays, being part of the cast. And one year you worked behind the
scenes, the crew.
Yeah. But getting back to what I was saying, looking back as a parent, I wish I had been a lot more aggressive. Especially that fourth grade class, that I kind of knew the teacher, that fourth grade teacher where Jesse was stuck in that art room. He wasn't really a friend of ours, but I knew him through our temple, and I guess I kind of felt a little funny, making a scene, pulling Jesse out. But looking back, I wish I had the gumption, to have done that. And
that's a hard.
Another thing I did. Hello, yeah, who's talking? Oh, here you are.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that's a hard thing for parents, is just like knowing when to make a fuss and when to let things go. I was giving that advice to a parent today where in New Jersey, children are supposed to be allowed to start school based upon their birthday. And this district just said, well, we're not doing assessments because we're closed because of the whole COVID. And I said, no, you can't tolerate that, because that child is entitled to start school. And it doesn't matter, they're still entitled to start school, even if they didn't get to do the assessments in time.
Definitely.
The parent, was saying, well, I don't want to make a fuss because of the fact that, they're going to be in the district for a long time. And I said, well, you have to fight for your child's rights. So I think as a parent, you wish you would have fought more.
Well, looking back, we really didn't know what was going on until Jesse was, I guess, about 14, when he was going into his freshman year of high school. Oh, Jesse was, right, Jesse? I remember you were washing your hands all the time, and we saw some OCD behavior. And we went to a child psychologist, and that was the very first time that we heard the word Asperger's. And that was the first time we learned that, he was on the autism spectrum. We also went to other professionals besides that child psychologist. His name, I think, was Dr. Han, yeah, something like that. Jesse also went to, I forgot, when Jesse, I'm backtracking, when he was 4, we took him to a pediatric neurologist at Columbia University. My mom had a friend who researched everything, and she told me about this Dr. Gold from, I think he's since passed away. He looked ancient back then. So we took Jesse to Dr. Gold. And at that appointment, I had the evaluation that child psychologist did in Fishkill when Jesse was 4. the psychologist who said she saw autistic-like features. So this man had a previous evaluation done by the psychologist, but Dr. Gold's diagnosis of Jesse was not autism. It was some static encephalopathy. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Whatever that was, you know, it's just generic like diagnosis. But I remember his words like it was yesterday. He said, academically, he'll be okay. His challenges will be social. And by golly, he was right. And, you know, years later, I often said to myself, why did he miss that diagnosis? Why did he not see that, yeah, we're looking at a little boy on the spectrum? Because I feel that the signs were there. Looking back as a parent, I wonder, why didn't I see some of the signs, you know, like with the hand flapping and other behaviors. But, you know, Asperger's was already in the DSM-4. Oh, no, maybe it wasn't. Oh, so Jesse was born in, 1982. He saw the pediatric neurologist at Columbia when he was, when you were 6, so that was 1988. Okay, and if I remember, Asperger's did not appear in the DSM, in the manual, until 1994. But Asperger's was already translated from German to English. You know, Jutta Frith, was that her name? Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long journey. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. No, it was kind of a long journey. Oh, and then in addition to the pediatric neurologist, when Jesse was in that kindergarten, that special kindergarten, the teachers was telling us that they didn't think, they were concerned because, you know, Jesse was having problems socially, and even though the other students in the class also had issues, the teacher seemed like really it was something about Jesse that they wanted to look into. Oh, and that's when we started taking Jesse to this local child psychologist who was not at all helpful. And, you know, we didn't know what else to do. You know, we were afraid not to take him. But yeah, like looking back, I wish I had said to myself, or my husband and I wish we had said, you know, he's not helping. He's not addressing the issues. All he told Jesse was, you have to let go of the negative energy, right, Jesse?
Yeah, something.
So, yeah.
A lot of things that were completely unhelpful and not practical.
Yeah, and he would go off on tangents and start talking about Judaism. I'm not there to talk about religion. I'm there to get my son help. So, yeah, again, as the parent, I wish I had made a change. I wish I was more like aggressive instead of just going through the motions. We stopped taking Jesse to that psychologist when Jesse went into that new 5th grade class because you were doing better, and I just, you just stopped going. And one other, I know I'm going back and forth with evaluations. When we found out that Jesse was on the spectrum, when he was around 14, we went to another, she was, I think, a pediatric neurologist. I also think she passed away. They were all these professionals looked very old to me at the time. And she confirmed the diagnosis of Asperger's. And the last professional we took you to Jesse was another psychologist in Poughkeepsie who did psychological evaluations, and she also confirmed the Asperger's because there was this big discrepancy between your verbal and nonverbal performance. And Jesse, do you think one other change you would have made? Oh, we did we finally pulled you out of Hebrew school, right?
Yes.
And had you privately tutored for your bar mitzvah, because going to school full time, having to do homework, right?
And
going to nursery school, I think was twice a week. It was too much. So I think after about a year, or was it less than a year, I pulled you out. And I wish I had done it sooner. And sometimes you talk about college. Maybe you wish you had waited to go to college. Right.
I have this friend named Jason, and I believe he went to college when he went to a residential college at around the age of 24, and I know he was well past 21 years of age, and for him it was a good experience. Quite frankly, going to college was essentially like being a small child thrown into a swimming pool for the first time, or a lake, and said, just swim. And of course you can't. And eventually I kind of learned what to do and what not to do. But in my opinion, by that time, the damage was absolutely irrevocable, and I suffered dearly. I probably would have benefited from a place, even though things fell into place toward the end, I would have benefited from a program like the one where I teach right now, where it's geared for students with challenges, and it's called the college experience.
Yeah, well, there are other programs like that. Right? What's the other program that he wrote a book, McCannon, or what was
Michael McMahon?
Yeah, what was that program?
It's called the College Internship Program.
Yeah, so you think going to a program like that before going to a regular college might have been helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least some kind of a preparatory program where I would understand the difference between expectations in high school and college. I'll give you an example of one of the many things that went wrong at the start of my college career. When I was in high school, toward the end, I started to go out on dates with young ladies for the first time, and it was not a total disaster. And to get my dates to the prom, I would aggressively ask as many ladies as possible, and I knew the odds were that somebody would say yes. And I thought, wow, this is a great idea. I'm going to do this all the time. And in college, the same tactic was beyond disastrous. And one of the many nicknames I was called was Sketchy Jesse as a result. And all I can say is it seemed like a good idea at the time. And I suffered because of those actions. So I wish that somebody could have held my hand for a little while, or at least given me some ideas as to the new realities in this transition.
You were also called Running Jesse because you were often late and running.
I ran constantly, and by the time I stopped, it was too late.
Yeah, and at your college, you didn't really know anybody else, right? There was like one other person that you knew that had Asperger's, so it was, and there weren't any support groups, right? And even though that at college, and even though there was an academic support department, that there was no established program, right?
Right, and there were therapy services.
Mm-hmm.
There was mental health counseling, I believe, in the health center, but I never would have made use of those conveniences because, quite frankly, I've never believed in it. I'm not knocking those types of professionals, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have helped me or will help me today. For example, I would have told the therapist, unless you can get the other students to stop bullying me and treating me like toxic waste, I don't really see the point of all this.
Yeah, and then was it your junior year or was it senior year where you had a problem with that one female student? Yeah, she was like really making your life difficult.
Right. I was a residential advisor
Yeah.
for 2 theme houses in my senior year, and there was one young woman who was extremely uncomfortable around me, and she was living in my house, in the theme house where I lived. I was in charge of the one down the street, but due to us living together and her instantly being uncomfortable, it was a terrible first semester. And fortunately, she was so frightened by me that she left that house and moved someplace else the second semester. And I essentially said, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. I was not saddened to see her disappear, but it reminded me that there's going to be people who will not like us no matter what we do or do not do. And one of the ways I freaked her out was I gave her one of my very long birthday cards.
Mm-hmm.
Most people loved them, but she was she felt it was imposing and very over the top. And I basically said to her, I know that was the whole point.
You like to push your buttons, yeah. But there were a few, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there were a few people at your college who were nice to you, right?
Right.
Your sophomore year, you met Carl, yeah, and Serena was also very kind to you. But yeah, but it was a challenging 4 years, and you got to know the president of Hobart and his wife and family. But yeah,
I should clarify that there were still enough people who were kind to me, but that does not change the fact that the ones who were not made life unbearable.
yeah, I often wonder how it is for students, college students now who are on the spectrum, whether it's Asperger's, autism, high functioning autism. I would think that there are more programs available, more support. I just wonder if students are just more understanding and more giving. I don't know. I would hope so, but I mean, I don't know. You know?
It's never going to be perfect. I want to make that clear. But my advice for any new college student is to spend the first month or the first 2 months at the very most doing as little as possible. Meaning your job is to go to class, not flunk out, and kind of observe things, and don't try to be funny or get a girlfriend your first 2 months. That's not your job, and there's going to be plenty of time for that. And I think that one of the mistakes I made was I tried to do too much at once, and turned out to be just counterproductive toward transitioning. And I think that, not that you made a mistake or anything, but I think that I just remember a time when I was in my room text messaging, not text messaging, we did not have text messaging back then, IMing people on AOL, and you were upset that I was in my room speaking to old high school acquaintances on the internet. You wanted me to become immersed in college life and not waste those 4 years just sitting in my room, not embracing college life. But I think that's a good idea to just cower and do your own thing and go to class without worrying about whether everyone likes you. Because, as I said, there's almost 4 full years to make up for those lost 2 months. And I think that everybody in college, they have to go through a transition of weaning themselves away from the old routine. And I remember trying to hold on for dear life to my acquaintances and friends from back home instead of embracing college. Quite frankly, I had to be dragged out of high school kicking and screaming because by that time everything was hunky-dory and
Yeah.
it was close to perfect toward the end. And then after having scratched for so long to make things so wonderful, it was over, and I had to enter a new environment where things would not have worked out.
Yeah, kind of like a late bloomer, but I think a lot of people have a similar experience. Maybe not the same as you, but I think when kids do, well, when young adults do go off to college, I think a lot of them do hold on to old friends, and you're kind of teeter-tottering, you know, it's change and it's a transition, and it's comforting to hold on to what you're comfortable with.
But when no one reciprocates, it gets even harder, or they're just going through the motions. And I remember I used to visit my old high school on vacations just to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This lasted for, I think, a solid year. And one of my former friends from high school, or someone I thought was a close friend, once got nasty with me and said, "Look, not everybody keeps in touch. That's just life." And that was really hurtful. And I think that one of the things I would want to do to give back is intervene in so-called stalking allegations that occur in college, because like a light switch, the harmless pursuit of a classmate could be construed as stalking, and it can be a really big deal if a student who's uncomfortable is vocal enough. I want to be the person who comes into the situation to diffuse it and just tells the students the facts of life if they have Asperger's, and they're not going to take it personally or feel like I'm picking on them, because I can also say, look, the same thing has happened to me, and these were the natural consequences of my actions. I just wish there were actual rules in college and life. There are no rules. Everyone makes up their own rules, and there's no way to please anybody. It would be nice if there were rules like if you ask out a woman more than 3 times in a 3-month or 2-month period, it can be seen as stalking. So I could not go over that quota. And if someone says you're stalking her, I'd say, but I've only asked her out 3 times in 3 months, and I don't plan to go for a 4th time. And then they'd say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was only 3 times."
Yeah. Well, you had that problem in the bank, remember?
Right.
Remember? Yeah.
I've had lots of problems in my home community, to be honest.
Yeah. But you also did great things in your community, right?
Yes.
You're recognized for that. Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, the misunderstandings will never, ever stop. So the only solution is, whenever I'm doing business with someone new, is to give them a letter explaining, I do the best I can, but if I do something that makes you uncomfortable, bring it to my attention nicely and give me the benefit of the doubt. That really helps.
Yeah, this is really great advice. You know, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about your journey and your story, and hear you both recollect or recall, your perspectives of what it is. And it's really beautiful to see that. I think a lot of parents, you know, who are wondering if they'll ever have the chance to do that with their child. And when you first get a diagnosis of autism, especially today, it's very scary. You know, when you do it, and Jesse knew Jesse had autism. He was a freshman in high school,
Mm-hmm.
they're getting that diagnosis at 2 or 3 and their child's not talking yet and they're wondering what it's going to look like. And I think this is really helpful for them to see. We are like very close to the top of the hour when we usually turn down these calls. And I know this was a little bit different today for everyone who came on for Ask an Autistic. And I thank everyone for coming on and who listened to this live. You know, Jesse, I just want to ask you and your mom the same question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what was the number one most helpful thing that you did? And I'm going to ask Jannis if you can answer that first, and we'll see if Jesse agrees with you. What was the number one most helpful thing during that whole journey you talked about, from, you know, starting in pre-K in that special school up until getting him to the transition programs into college? What was the most helpful thing that you did for Jesse, do you think?
That I guess keeping in touch with teachers if I had any concerns. As I said before, I think there were times I could have been more aggressive, done a better job advocating. But throughout the journey, I think I eventually made the right decisions. When I think one thing that both my husband and I did well was, when Jesse got out of college and he wasn't, sure what he was going to do, because he didn't apply to graduate school, and he wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. Yeah, we supported him. Like, we didn't say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Like one of his aunts said to Jesse, right, Jesse? You don't have to mention her name, but she said, have you told your parents about that? Like, oh my God, But yeah, we didn't hold Jesse back. For myself, I think the most important thing maybe that I did was, there was a time I did go to a therapist, yes. And I think, Jesse, I don't know if I ever told you that, I may have. When I first found out about the Asperger's, there wasn't a lot known about it then. I don't even think I was on the computer yet. I mean, there was no internet, I don't think then. It was a very, very, very lonely time for me. And yes, it was scary. And I did, it was a process of grieving, yeah, because just not knowing the future. And the thing that I did for myself that was probably the most helpful for myself was I just had hope. I knew I had a great kid, a bright kid. And it was a quote actually that Jesse included in his memoir. Throughout the years, I've came up with these great quotes that I had wanted to put into a book one day. And one of the quotes was, hope is a glimmer of light in a parent's darkest hours. So that's one advice I would give parents. You just have to have hope.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yep. Yeah.
Sharing that.
Hope.
And Jesse,
Yeah.
for you, what was the most thing? What did your mom do
Yeah.
and you're most grateful for that she did?
Well, both of my
Be kind.
both my mother and father would often let me know if I did something right. So it was not always
Good.
things that had to be fixed. If one time I wrote a poem to my art teacher, for example, after she awarded me with Student of the Month, and my father Lewis said, "That is a very nice letter you wrote your art teacher." So it was not constant criticism, unlike other families, where just hear about everything that is wrong and it needs to be fixed. But they, as my mother said, they did not hold me back, and they understood, even though they put up a good fight at times, that there's some things I cannot let go of, and it's not going to change. For example, they allowed me to go trick-or-treating until I was 31 years old. I have only one thing to say about that. It was awesome. And they also,
I actually on a dare, like it was, I lost a bet, and it was like last year, and I had to go trick-or-treating, I had to go for 1 hour trick-or-treating. So I got like this big giant unicorn, so no one knew who I was. Just, I was like, all right. And I have to admit, I don't even eat candy, but it was kind of fun. So I can enjoy it, Jesse.
Jesse,
one more thing that they did right. Another thing is whenever I made a mess, I would have to clean it up myself. So I still was expected to maintain a part-time or a full-time job, and I think right mother, I worked quite often. I was never idle for too long. Would you say that?
Yeah, you volunteered for the Alzheimer's Association.
Oh, yeah.
And you had a job as a janitor and a summer job. And
when I was older, close to my 30s, I ended up getting myself into $25,000 worth of credit card debt.
Oh, yeah, we hit the fan with that, right?
Right. My mother and father had to take out a home equity loan on the house so I could pay off my debts, but I paid back the home equity loan with my constant employment.
Yeah. I don't remember Dad doing that. That's what he did? Yeah, okay.
Well, it sounds like you had amazing parents, Jesse. And, we can probably talk about this.
Not perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely. We could probably talk about this forever, but we do need to wind it down. But I think it's helpful for everybody to hear this conversation and to it's great to be able to listen to you guys recall your story and everything that went into making Jesse who he is. And I think
thank you.
Helped us understand you a lot better listening to this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jannis, for sharing with us today. And for all the panelists who got to listen in but didn't get to contribute tonight, we still love you, and we'll look forward to hearing your contributions next week. And maybe if anyone else wants to come and do this with their parents, we'll have you guys on as well.